The Buxton to Briggs token machine. Now, sometimes they can't get a key out from the other end, so sometimes it's worth, if you press the galvo, you get the galvanometer. As long as you've got galvanometer moving, the lines are through all the way to the other end. So if the guy can't take a key out the other end when you're pressing him, then the fault lies in the machine at the other end. Sometimes it's worth just trying to press your own knee plunger, get your own key out. That can then be given to the mom to drive around to the other end, and then the guy at the other end will have a key. That saves having to get the S&T out all the way. Sometimes when you get a key out, it doesn't release the starting signal. And what it is, when you take the key out, as you turn it, makes this little contact inside that you can't see. This one here. It's part brass and it's part plastic. Sometimes the plastic gets dirty or it gets worn. If you turn it too quick, that thing doesn't rock as it's supposed to. See the bit there that's moving? That one there? It doesn't rock in a smooth manner, and that's what stitches you up. That's why when you take the token key out, do it slow till it reaches the lock, let it drop, and then turn and take the key out. Otherwise you'll just jam it.
Motor points. One of the tricks the S&T know about motor points is that when you try a motor point over, it normally takes between 3 to 7 seconds for the points to actually go over and travel. Watch this now as I put this motor point normal. 1, 2, 3. About 3 seconds. Now if I were to put the points over and not get any detection, let's try that now. 1, 2, 3. Oh, sorry. Try again. There we go, we've got no detection this time. Okay, right, let's put the lever back straight away and watch what happens. Oh, detection came in instantly, straight away. That means that point hasn't moved at all. When a point moves over, it normally takes a few seconds, as you can see. That tells you that the motor's trying. If the indication came back up straight away, that means the motor's never moved. And that means it's a proper failure, call the S&T out. If it tries to go over, but doesn't detect, and then when you put it back, it still takes a few seconds to come back in, it's trying to go over. There's something out there fouling the points. Go and check the points.
When reporting faults to the S&T, it's fairly good to know the nomenclature of what things are called. Some people have been on the railways for years, some people have only just come on. So let's get a few things. Left hand switch rail, right hand switch rail, 4-foot rods or stretchers. This is the switch extension piece, and there can be one on the other side as well if required. These nuts here we call the PA, precise adjustment nuts. We might have rodding that goes out the back for the back drive, as we call it, to pull the back of the points in. And also this one's designed for a hand point. There used to be a hand point here, but you will see the front rod comes out longer. That is the extension piece on the front rod, or as we call it, the kicker. The back rod doesn't have them traditionally. We have a drive rod that goes off to the points. These we call shoes. Mechanical detectors. Now there's a few important things to note about mechanical detectors. Some of them have one rod through them, some of them have 2 rods or 3 rods. Traditionally, each switch rail is detected by a rod that goes through the mechanical detector. So as you can see here, this is a set of traps. This switch rail here, that rod needs to be up and this hole aligned so that you can get the signal off. Here's our signal, there's our wire to the rod, and our rod that goes off to the signal box. When the points are correctly aligned, this notch lines up in here so that you can pull this through bar. If that through bar is for any reason catching on this rod, say for instance there's a bit of muck in the points and not fully gone up, it will start to snag here on the side, and when this bar goes back you'll find you won't be able to drag your points. If you look very carefully you'll notice there's a small round stop, this little round pin there, and that should be back there reasonably against the casting. If it's not and it's stood quite a way off, it will jam the points. You can put your foot against this and push this back in quite easily. A little bit of spring on some of them. It's a very cold day here, that's why I've got a bit of tension on it. But invariably, as long as that is back against its stop, you'll be able to move the points. And that has been known to cause a few problems on quite a few sets of points. One thing we S&T do is we keep an eye on this thing. You'll notice the very front of the points has a very long rod on it. That long rod protrudes out. The design of this is so that if the points start to void or the switch rails start to ride too high, this catches it under the rail and stops it riding well above the switch. As you can see here, I can run my finger across the top of this rail here and they're both level. If that switch rail were to start riding higher and higher and higher, the wheels of the train would start smashing the front of the switch off. That would damage the switch blade and cause you some problems. There's a very easy telltale you can see here. These points have a bit of voiding on them. As you can see, that is quite worn there. As it's been going over and backwards, it's been rubbing underneath the stock rail. So that's something, if you notice, you can report it to the S&T as a problem. And I'll give you away here, if you look, you'll just see the switch rail is starting to ride high from the actual points. And yet at the front, they're level. So I would report that to the BOA and say lift and pack needed there, starting to get very heavy points. And I can tell they're heavy because I can see the wear mark on the switch extension piece. Points themselves, one of the things that most people check for obstructions is at the front of the points. However, not many people bother to check the back of the points. I'll give you a little example. A small stone down there underneath those blocks will do the exact same effect as holding the front of the points off. So when you check points for obstructions, don't just check the front, check all the way to the back. This is usually where you need a scraper to get underneath that block that you can just see there. There's a little gap under there, that's where frozen grease tends to build up. During summer, they get greased by the PUA, no problems. As soon as winter comes, it freezes up solid, causes you problems. So that's a good place to check at the back as well as at the front. Problems with facing point locks. Traditionally, facing point lock comes with a cover. And this cover sits with the legs there underneath the back, as you can just see. So it sits underneath there, and then this goes over the front there. Usually it needs a little boot to kick it down. This one comes off fairly easy. It has to go this way round. If for some reason someone puts it that way round, gets it the wrong way, as it has happened, depending on the cover you get, it will jam this, and that will jam your detector. It has happened before, a couple of times, so it should always go with the long bit sticking out the same way as the FPL. I've taken the cover off this FPL so you can see inside. Now, as you can see on this FPL, this is the locking rod that all points have. On mechanical, it's a facing point lock rod. You can see there's a clear gap either side there. On very hot days or very cold days, the switch rail can either expand or pull back and put this rod against the casting, making it heavy to pull. So that can be reported to the S&T. And what we do there, we tend to get the PUA involved and pull the switch rails back. Another thing to look out for, the switch rail itself should sit beautifully on the slide chair at the front. Traditionally you can see these also drift off, and that's a good clue that the switch rails have extended. And that's when we get the PUA involved and pull them back. The FPL itself, when it goes in, should have a clearance. Now, traditionally that's 1.5mm. You can just see it's about 1.5mm there. If it's getting very close to there, it wants reporting to the S&T. There's a problem. On this one, as we can see, the switch rail is beautifully up and we have that clearance. If it was rubbing, I'd report to the S&T and we'll get the S&T out to have a look down the switch and see what's going on there. So again, cover on, feet over at the back, sits down on the pins at the front.